draw a little simple fox, something kind of like this. And I'll give it a background and make it a little more interesting. So what we're going to do is go ahead and start making our shapes. So I'm going to start with what will be the ear for his head. So to start, I'm going to grab my ellipse tool over here. Okay, so find our ellipse tool, and we're going to draw a little ellipse here, and I'm going to adjust this shape a little bit. And I'm going to take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to click on this top anchor point. Okay, so just that top anchor point is selected. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that to a corner. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my direct selection tool again, and I'm going to click on this bottom anchor point and push that up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my selection tool. I'll select this shape, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to warp the shape a little bit. So we're going to use, under Effect, we'll go to Warp and Arc. So we'll come up at the very top, select Effect, we're going to go to Warp, and we're going to choose Arc. So since I drew this in more of a vertical position, I'm going to select the vertical option. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a bend, we'll say about 20%. And I'll set my vertical axis to about 25%, and I'll leave my horizontal axis at 0%. So we'll go ahead and click OK, now that we warped the shape. Okay, so right now it thinks it was that original shape that I have, so my bounding box is surrounding what was the original shape would have been. So to fix that, what I need to do is I need to expand the appearance. So to expand the appearance, we're going to go under Object and Expand Appearance. Okay, so now I've got my first basic ear shape. I'm going to create an inside piece for this ear, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So I'll select my shape, then on my keyboard I'll just hit Control-C and Control-V to make a copy and paste it. Or what I better yet do is hit Control-F to paste it right on top. And then when I paste it on top, I'm going to maybe scale it down. So to scale it down, I'm going to right-click, Transform, and Scale. And I'll scale this down about 75%. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK. So now I've got this inside part of the ear, like so. Okay, so now that I've got the two parts of the ear drawn, I'm going to go ahead and select those two parts, and then I'm going to group them together. So you can either right-click and group them, or you could go under Object and Group. Either way, it'll do the same thing. So I've got one ear, and since it's already drawn, all I need to do now is just copy the ear. So I hit Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. And now I've got two ears, except they're both facing the same direction, and I don't want them to face the same direction. I want one to face the other way. So I can either right-click and choose Transform, Reflect, or I can go up to the top where it says Object, and I can go Transform and Reflect. Either way, it'll do the same thing. And I'm going to go ahead and have that reflect on the vertical. Okay, so if your previews button selected, you can see what's happening. So go ahead and click OK. And I'll go ahead and line these up across from each other. All right, so now that I've got these two ears drawn, I'm going to go ahead and draw the face, or his head. Okay, so I'm going to take my ellipse tool again, and I'm going to draw an oval here, or a circular, somewhat ovally shape here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to click on this top anchor point, and I'm going to stretch the top of the head over a little bit to the left, and I'm going to grab this handle over here and stretch it over to the right a little bit. Then I'm going to click on this anchor point on the left, and after I click on that, I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard, and I'm going to select this other anchor point on the opposite side. So you'll notice that this one and this one are highlighted, where this one and this one, the one on top and the one on the bottom, are not. Once I've got those two anchor points on the left and on the right select, I'm going to convert that to a corner. Then I'm going to go ahead and push those down, and I'm just using the down arrows on my keyboard. Okay, so I want to make this face a little bit bigger, and I'm going to create a little bit more of a bigger shape to it. So after I do that initial part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under Effect, I'm going to go to Warp, and I'm going to use the shell lower, and we're going to set that to horizontal because the shape is horizontally drawn. Okay, so I'll set my bend to about 20%. I'll maybe set my vertical to about 5%, and I'll leave the horizontal at 0. So after that, I'll go ahead and click OK. And since I warped the shape, I now need to expand the appearance in order to have it recognize the new shape that I made. So we'll go up to Object, scroll down till we find Expand Appearance, and we'll expand the appearance of that shape. Alright, so now I'll just slide that up a little bit, and we'll cover up the bottom of those ears. Okay, so now what I want to go ahead and do is I want to split this face in half. But maybe I'll go ahead and start coloring him so he looks a little more like a fox instead of being blue here. So I'm going to grab my scissor tool. So if you look under your eraser icon, you've got 3 options. There's the eraser tool, there's the scissor tool, and the knife tool. I'm going to use my scissor tool. Okay, so with my scissor tool, I'm going to come over here to the anchor point on the left, and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to come over to the anchor point here on the right, and I'm going to click on that. So what that's going to do is it's going to cut that from that line over to that line. And then what I can do is I can take my swatches and I can throw some color in there. So I'm going to color the bottom half here white, and I'll go ahead and make the top half. And then I'm going to go ahead and color in these ears as well. And if I take my direct selection tool, I can click on the middle of those inside ear shapes, and then I can change the color of those. And yeah, I'll make it kind of a light pinkish color. Okay. Alright, so now I'll work on a face. So I'm going to go ahead, take my ellipse tool again, and I'm going to make, well, I'll come out here to the side. I'm going to draw a little circle. And when I draw that, I'm going to hold shift so that it creates a perfect circle. And then I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool again, and I'm going to draw a little circle inside that circle. And I'm going to change the color to white. Give this guy a little highlight in the middle of his eye here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and select those 2 pieces, and I'm going to group them together. So you can group them by right-clicking and selecting group. When you have the shape selected, of course, you must have them selected in order to group them together. So I'll go ahead and put this one on the left side, and I'm going to copy that by hitting Control-C, Control-V to paste, and we'll stick the other eye on the other side. So now he's got a couple of eyeballs. Let's go ahead and give him a nose and a mouth. So for the nose, I'm going to go ahead and draw a little oval shape. I'll take my direct selection tool, click on the bottom here, and I'm going to convert that to a corner to give this nose a little bit more of a pointed shape. And I'm going to warp the shape a little bit too. So I'll go under Effect, I'm going to go to Warp, and I'm going to go Shell Upper. Let me slide this over so we can see what's going on here. And I'll set my bend to about 20%. I'll leave my horizontal to 0, and have this vertical set to 5%. And again, I'll have it on the horizontal option because the shape that I'm drawing is going to have more of a horizontal shape. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And since I warped the shape, I now must expand the appearance. Okay, so now I can take my selection tool, drag this over to his face. I might shrink the size down just a little bit and deselect that real quick, and I'm going to take my ellipse tool and I'm going to draw a little circle on, or a little oval on top of his nose, and then I'm going to turn that oval to white so he has a little highlight on top of his. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab my ellipse tool again, and I'm going to draw a little circle. But when I draw, I'm going to hold shift because I want it to be a perfectly symmetrical circle. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the color from the fill and just have the color inside the stroke or the outline. So if you click on the fill color, you can choose the option to have no color. You can find that in your swatches, or any other color block there will work just fine. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and grab my scissors again, like we used earlier. I'm going to snip this on the left side. I'm going to snip this on the right side. And then I'm going to take my direct selection tool and click the top half and delete it. So just hit backspace or delete on your keyboard. I'll bring this over, and we're going to make this part of his mouth. So I'm going to line that up with his nose in the middle, and I'll just go ahead and copy this shape here by hitting Control C, Control V to paste, and then I can go ahead and put that here on the other side. And now he's got his mouth. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take my selection tool, grab all these pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and group it together. So if I need to move the head, it will move as one unit instead of all the several pieces that I have drawn. Okay, so this will make it a little bit easier later on down the line when we start drawing other parts of his body. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start drawing his body. So we're going to start with the torso. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and we're going to draw a little torso shape. Then I'm going to take my direct selection tool, I'm going to flatten out the bottom, and I'm going to stretch out the sides a little bit. And I'm going to use my handles, and I'm going to kind of create somewhat of a rounded triangular type shape. Not super triangular, but a little bit. I'll click on that top anchor point and convert it to a corner. So maybe it's more like a Hershey kiss. So I might even go ahead and grab this color that I used inside his head there. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do, since I've drawn this and it's starting to cover up his face, is I'm going to select this shape. And there's two ways we can do this. You can either go under Object, Arrange, Send to Back, or you could right-click, Arrange, and Send to Back. Either way, it'll do the same thing. So we'll just send that to the back there. And now we're going to go ahead and create a chest piece for him. So I'm going to take my ellipse tool again, and we're going to draw a little oval shape. And I'm going to take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to pull out the sides, grab those anchor points and pull them up and over to create kind of a rounded triangular type shape. And we're going to make this part white. Now what I want to do is, this is covering his face again, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab with my selection tool this back piece and this chest piece, and I'm going to go ahead and send them to the back. So if it's right click, arrange, send to back. So now we've got his torso, his chest there. Let's go ahead and give him some arms and legs. So for those, we're going to grab our ellipse tool again, and I'm going to draw his back legs. Okay, so we're going to make a little oval shape that's going to become one of his legs. Maybe I'll grab my eyedropper and we'll make it the same color as the rest of them. Okay, so I'm going to spin this out because we're going to have his legs kind of pointing out here on the sides. So this will be the left leg. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this leg. So select it with my selection tool, hit Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and then I'm going to go ahead and reflect it for the other side. So we can go under Object, Transform, Reflect, or we could go right click, Transform, Reflect. Either way, it'll get the job done. I'm going to reflect it on the vertical. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to draw his foot or his paw. So I'm going to take my ellipse tool, we're going to make a little oval, and then what we're going to do is we're going to warp that shape. So while the shape is still selected here, we'll go under Effect, Warp, and I'm going to use the Arc option. Okay, so I'm going to set that to horizontal, of course, because we're drawing on the horizontal. Okay, I'll set my bend to about 25%, and I'll have the vertical set to about 20%, and we'll call that good. So click OK, And since we warped the shape, we now must expand the appearance. Alright, so now we've got the basic part of the foot. I might shrink that down a little bit. So if you hold shift while you scale it, you can keep the dimensions and just make it smaller. If you don't hold shift, then it's going to warp the shape. So you want to probably hold shift while you do that. What I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a little toe space here in the middle there. And I'll take my ellipse tool. We're going to draw a little circular shape there. And I'm going to go ahead and warp this shape too. So we'll go under Effect, Warp, maybe use Arc again. And I'll use maybe the same dimensions that I used on the previous part. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And since I warped the shape, I now must expand the appearance. So we'll go under Object, Expand the Appearance. And I'll go ahead and bring that down inside here. And if you hold shift after you click on the first piece, you can select the other piece without selecting all the other parts that you've drawn. So I'm going to go ahead and group those together. So you can go under Object Group, or you can right click Group. Either way, it'll group it together. Now when I move that, it'll move as one solid piece. Okay, so now we've got one paw. I can go ahead and copy that by hitting Control C, Control V to paste. We'll stick this here on the other side. Well, for the front legs, I'll go ahead and grab my, let's grab our rectangle tool. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here, and we're going to warp this shape, and this time we're going to use the squeeze option. I'll set that to vertical, and I'm going to put my options on the vertical to about negative, we'll say negative 20%. And I'll do maybe a negative 20% on the bend as well. Okay. So after that, we'll keep that as 0. We'll click OK. And since I warped the shape, we now need to expand the appearance. I'm going to bring this over. This is going to become his front leg. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to grab my scissor tool, and I'm going to click on this point, and I'll come over here and click on this point. We'll take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to select this top half, and then I'm just going to hit delete. Then what I can do is grab this foot. We're going to copy that by selecting it, hitting Control C, and then Control V to paste it. We'll stick this. Now I'm going to grab this foot. I'm going to hold shift, grab this leg, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and then I'm going to go ahead and reflect it. So I'll go right click, transform, and reflect. Make sure that's vertical, click OK. We'll line this up here on the other side. I'm going to select the head, and then I'm going to select the chest by holding shift and clicking on it with my selection tool. And then we're going to go Object Arrange, and we'll bring that to the front. So it'll push those legs behind the chest while remaining behind the head there. Now we're going to go ahead and give him a tail. So to make the tail, I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and we're going to draw a ellipse out here, an oval out to the side here. And I'm going to grab this anchor point here on the end, and I'm going to drag that down by the handles to make it a little bit bulkier here on this end. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the one, and I'm going to copy it. So hit Control C, Control V, and I'm going to line them up together, having them overlap one another. Then I'll take my direct selection tool, and I'm going to click on the anchor points on the left. Then I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to click on this other anchor point on the left side, and we're going to convert that to a corner. Then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to unite those two shapes together with my Pathfinder tool. So if you can't find your Pathfinder tool, just look under Window, and you'll find that. So we'll unite that together. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to overlap the end there, grab my selection tool so I can scale the size here a little bit. We're going to stick this here on the end, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those two parts of the tail, and I'm going to use my Pathfinder again, and this time I'm going to divide it. And then after I divide it, I need to ungroup it so I can get rid of this extra piece. So you can ungroup it by either going right click, ungroup, or you can go Object, Ungroup. Either way, it'll get the job done. So once you ungroup it, deselect it, then select this extra piece, and then get rid of it. So I'm going to turn the end of this tail to white. I'm going to go ahead and select those two parts of the tail, and I'm going to group them together. So if you select the two parts, you can choose the option Group by right-clicking and selecting Group, or you can go under Object and Group. Either way, it will do the same thing. Now, we're going to go ahead and send this to the back. So you can go under Object, Arrange, Send to Back, or you can right-click, Arrange, Send to Back. Either way. Alright, so we're going to grab this guy, and I'm going to pull him down a little bit closer to the bottom of the page. And now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create a background. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer. So open up my layers window. If you don't see your layers window, just look under window here at the top, scroll down till you find layers, and then open that up. We'll lock that layer, create a brand new layer. I'm going to hide this layer for a minute while I draw a background. So if you click on the little eyeball there, you can hide your picture. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. Going to draw a rectangle that covers the entire artboard. Then I'm going to take my gradient tool. So if you can't find it over here on the right, look under window, scroll down till you find gradient. And we're going to throw a gradient in there. So I'm going to set my gradient to 90 degrees. So right here where it says angle, if you click on that little arrow, you can choose the options to 90 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and change my colors here. I'll make it blue. So if you double click on the little circles on your gradient, you can change the colors. So we'll have it be blue and white. So the blue will fade from light blue into white on the bottom. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw a little circular shape that's going to stretch over the front, come out this way, draw another one coming out from the right, and then I'm going to draw one more that's going to come out from the left. Now I'm going to go ahead and select these three circles. So if I click on the first one, then hold Shift with my keyboard, I can select these other three pieces. We're going to go back to our gradient tool, and I'm going to change the colors of these. So on the top, I want it to be a really light greenish color, and then on the bottom I'm going to choose really dark green, so we can create these kind of sunlit hills there. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take my ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw a cluster of circles here that are going to overlap one another. Okay, so then I'll take my selection tool, I'm going to select all those circles, I'm going to use my Pathfinder tool again, and I'm going to unite those circles together. Then what I can do, maybe we'll grab this blue color. So with my eyedropper, I'll just click on that. But I want it to actually be a little bit lighter on top. So I'll go back to my gradient tool, double click on this blue. Then I'm going to choose this color option and brighten that blue up so it's a really pale kind of blue. Okay, now I can take that with my selection tool, drag this back into the picture. Maybe I'll make a copy of that cloud. And I could right-click, transform, and reflect. And we'll reflect it the other way, so maybe it doesn't look 100% the same as the other one. Okay, so now we've got a couple clouds. We got some rolling hills. I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to drag layer 1 underneath layer 2. So we don't want to drop it inside layer 1. We want to drop it underneath layer 1. So let's pull that down. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to bring my fox back into focus, and I'm going to lock this background layer, unlock this layer, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'm going to grab the bottom half of this fox. And I'm going to make a copy of that. So hit Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And then I'm going to take this copy that I made, and I'm going to use my Pathfinder tool, and I'm going to unite those pieces together. And then, after I unite it together, I'm going to change the color, my fill color, to gray, and I'm going to remove the stroke. And then I'm going to arrange this to the back. So if you right-click, you can go Arrange, Send to Back. Stick this underneath the fox. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my transparency tool. So if you can't find your transparency tool, look under Window, scroll down, until you find transparency. So while this shape is still selected, I'm going to switch it from normal to multiply, which will make it see-through there. And then we'll create a little tiny cast shadow underneath our fox here. So there we have it, our happy little fox.